Hello, welcome, and Happy New Year. This is the Turn 4 Podcast, episode 54. I am your host, Dan Maldonado. If this is your first time listening, welcome. If you're a regular listener, welcome back. This podcast comes from the perspective of two lifelong fans of IndyCar. We're not insiders. I changed up the intro a little bit here, Timmy. Who am I talking to? My co-host, Tim Reiner. Let me introduce you to Timmy. Hey, Timmy.
Hello, Dan.
How are you?
I am good. How about yourself? It's the new year. I'm excited about the new year and the new seasons to come. And when I say seasons, I
we
with an
got
S, right?
Yes.
Multiple seasons.
Yeah, got a lot of things starting to kick off. Hey, nice hat.
Oh, thanks.
You must not have brushed your hair this morning.
Well, it's kind of hard to brush my hair for sure. There's not a whole lot up there. It's kind of long right now, so I had to cover my head because I kind of look like a clown. So I figured I'd just throw a hat on so that way I don't look like a clown. But yeah, thank you. I like yours too. Yours is leading up to the first
24.
race of the season,
I'm
right?
So excited! I can't wait.
I noticed that in our little pre-meeting here that you had that on, and so I had to throw the Sancio hat on. So that's what I did. So, for all your vehicle protection care,
that's right.
Check out Sancio.
Yeah, Sancio, our good friends at Sancio.
Mm-hmm.
Tim, we have a lot of news, a lot of new news happening, actually.
There's a lot of news going on.
Yeah, IndyCar, F1, IMSA, which can really only mean one thing, and that is
the seasons are coming, right?
Yes,
they're going to kick off.
Getting ready to happen here. So
yeah,
kick off a little bit of IndyCar news, and this is in no particular order. That's actually a lie. AJ Foyt Racing, kicking off the news here, throwing down in the engineering department.
That normally doesn't happen.
No, Michael Cannon from Chip Ganassi Racing. Cannon's been around. He's been very successful everywhere he goes. In fact, more recently with a championship with Scott Dixon in 2020, he will be headed over to AJ Foyt Racing to help out their efforts with Santino Ferrucci and God, I don't remember I'm sorry, I should probably know this, but it just slipped my mind. But is that a big deal, Tim?
Or is it a huge deal? It's a huge deal. It's a real deal. This is great for AJ Foyt Racing and to sort of move up the rankings here. They've been just squandering at the back of the field for a while here. And it's just really good to see that they've got, an engineer coming across, right? And Michael Cannon, I don't think you can, get any better for the AJ Foyt Racing squad to bring that over. So
he's going to bring some knowledge, and he's going to bring some knowledge and some probably some operating procedures, right, from some very successful organizations, particularly Ganassi, and he's going to add a lot of expertise to that team. You and I say it all the time, right? We want nothing more than AJ Foyt Racing to be somebody that we talk about on a more regular basis and really see them get together and do something on track. And it's been years, Tim, since we've really seen somebody out of that stable, do something notable. Benjamin Peterson. I'm sorry, Benjamin. I couldn't remember his name.
Yeah, this is really good, and it almost appears that it's a reuniting with Ferrucci at some point and throughout their career. So, or they're just saying it's successful bringing him over. So, we heard about at Detroit about culture and changing culture. Maybe this is a guy to bring in some culture change and really take that team to the next level, because they've just been not good for a long time, and it just seems to stick around with them. So we'll see what it brings the first half of the season and into the latter part, which I think that's when we might actually see some progress from the team. But overall, it's all great news for AJ Foyt Racing.
It is. New news today was Steve Erickson is going to be the new COO at Rahal Letterman Lanigan, which is a big deal. This is also a team that,
you're not going to ask this time. You're just going to say it's a big deal.
I think it's a big deal. And here's why. Here, you got a guy who has spent 30 years at HPD, right? Which is Honda Performance Development. So big organizations, organizational behaviors, right? He knows how to get things done. He's also very familiar with IndyCar and IMSA because he was in charge of Chip Ganassi's IMSA program
Mm-hmm.
until November 2020.
Okay. Well, it's interesting because this is the team that everybody thought would be a big contender last year, and they fell apart. And they've made some major changes throughout the offseason here to bring several folks in to sort of revamp this. They made some driver changes when it came to seats. So I think they're doing all the right things over at Rahal Letterman Lanigan. And I think they're
I just
gonna
like hearing you say it, but you said it right this time.
I know.
Good job.
Yeah, I try to get it right all the time. I could just say RLL, but that just doesn't seem right to me. But
That doesn't
will
roll
they
off the
be?
tongue either.
Yeah, that doesn't, not at all. So my thought here is that they would definitely become a contender with all the changes they've made, and they've got great sponsorship from different sponsors. Hy-Vee being obviously one of the major ones. So I think it's going to be good all around for them. And if they're not running with the top 3/4 teams, whatever we call it these days, then something else has to change. And maybe it's just gelling over time. Maybe it's going to take a little bit. I know you love that, but
Yeah, it drives me nuts.
this is another good move for Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing.
It is. It is. They've also bolstered their off-season engineering program, which should definitely help them get more usage. I was listening to Graham Rahal actually recently on a podcast where he was talking about
You did
they weren't
listen to that.
really extracting 100% out of their engineering program that they could. You know,
Hmm.
they were extracting a small percent. I think he said like 10%, but they were taking like a small percentage out of their engineering staff. So hopefully that will help. They knew that they were behind, certainly once Jack got there. Um, Jack being familiar with Andretti Autosport engineering support coming over from Shank. So, they knew that they needed to get their hot look, man, the results were there. They ended up salvaging the best part that they could toward the end of last year or last season, I should say, with Christian Lundgaard taking that very unexpected rookie of the year, I think.
Hmm.
So yeah, this is just one more piece, part of that Rahal Letterman Lanigan. I don't want to call it a rebuild because I doubt that they're calling it a rebuild. I'm sure that they're just calling it, just kind of a,
Just turning up
reinforcement,
the
so to speak.
boost, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Just
yeah.
turning up the boost a little bit.
Yep, exactly,
Trying to
exactly.
get to the next level, which they need to do for that organization. They got a brand new facility, as people probably know
Hmm.
already, and to bring in talent helps when you're got a state of the art facility. It's just natural, right? People want to be with a team that's up and coming and someone that's not stagnant or stale. And so these moves are great for this organization. We'll see where it ends up, but I expect them to be with the changes they made. I expect them to be, in the hunt for top fives and even podium finishes.
So do I. So do I. And it makes me a little bit nervous setting an expectation like that because if it doesn't pan out, let's say in the first few races of the season, then are we already writing them off?
IndyCar is very interesting to me in that I think you need to get out of the chute fast, right?
You do.
And you got to come off the trailer fast every weekend. And so you've got to have the base built to do that, right? So you got to have all the substance that makes that easy and makes it come naturally. And I think once that momentum hits, then you start to hit in areas of the program you never thought needed to be addressed or needed a boost, and everybody kind of comes together and rallies as an organization. If you start off on a bad foot here for Rahal Letterman Lanigan, then it's going to be a long go, I think, for the season. So they do need to get out of the chute quickly.
I'm going to say the first three races, but first three races collectively, right? And the reason why I say that, St. Pete, it's Texas, it's Long Beach back in its regular spot, and then Barber, right? That's
Hmm.
four. Okay.
Yep.
But why am I saying three? It's because it's a street course, an oval, and a permanent road course.
Yep.
So those are the three courses or sort of racing disciplines that IndyCar will visit throughout the season.
Yeah.
we should be able to get an idea of what Rahal's off-season program looks like based on how they're going to do there,
Yeah.
right? They had a decent car last year in Toronto, which, hopefully will translate to something with St. Pete and Long Beach.
Yep.
They were nowhere to be found, I think, at Indy, right? So I don't really know what
Yeah,
that
they
means for
missed.
oval, and however it's going to pan out for them. They were really good at Portland. They were not good at Laguna Seca. So it's kind of like I don't really know what that means for their permanent road course setups.
Yeah.
So to me, it's the first three races of the season. We'll see what that really looks like for them, and if it looks like some of these changes have panned out. To me, I think that Rahal. I think the Rahal team has made the most changes in this offseason. I really do. Rahal and Foyt.
Yeah, it seems like it. Yeah, they've been,
Feels like it.
moving people around and
Mhm.
acquiring new people, and um, so yeah, to your point, they need to get off to a good start, and we'll see what
We got to
circuits
see
they're sort of
Jack get
strong
off
at,
to a good
right?
start too, right? Jack Harvey.
Yeah, you do, right?
Mhm.
Otherwise, Jack's going to be in no man's land come,
Right.
mid season, and then obviously at season end. So
Yeah.
we'll see where it all plays, but good for them. They seem to be making the right moves, like you mentioned, and they got the facility, and they've got, I feel like they got a good driver lineup too.
Yeah. I agree. Changes aren't settled there. Even Andretti Autosport, they're swapping engineers for Kirkwood, who is newly returning to Andretti. He was a Indy Lights driver with Andretti before he went to Foyt for that 1 year last year,
Hmm.
and Devlin DeFrancesco's entry. So um, they're going to make some changes there. The engineer for Kirkwood, Jeremy Millis, he worked with Rossi at a time when Rossi had a great amount of success with Andretti. And he also has experience working with Joseph Newgarden when Newgarden
Hmm.
was a driver for Ed Carpenter Racing.
Okay.
Ron Barhorst, he'll be elevated from an internal support engineering role to be Devlin's engineer.
Okay.
Here's the thing Andretti results, we know how good Colton has been. Rossi got a win with that team last year.
Yep.
We know that the engineering department, so to speak, at Andretti is capable.
Hmm.
So certainly being able to make these engineering changes for these guys, I think is gonna, it can't hurt, right? DeFrancesco, I think,
No.
had a rough year last year. Had a
Hmm.
really rough year last year, so it can't hurt the changes, and certainly bringing somebody on with a winning record to work with Kirkwood is
Yeah.
certainly a good idea.
Yeah. I still don't love that they're keeping uh Herta with his dad, right? So
Yeah,
that
but Dad's not an engineer. Dad's a strategist,
I
right?
know. It
So,
just
yeah, but
I
I
don't like that
understand what you're saying.
combination.
Yeah, yeah, I know what you're saying there. Um, what do I want to say about this? Other than to say
It's
we're gonna talk about it during the season preview, but
Mhm.
again, I must have a lot of time on my hand. I was listening to Bobby Rahal talk on a podcast about leaving Graham's pit box, and it was a good idea. And Tim, we listened to a lot of radio last year with Colton and Brian,
Mhm.
and a lot of interactions there that just weren't great.
No.
So
Well,
I
I think
mean,
you look
putting somebody else there is okay. Can Brian still pull the strings on strategy and everything else? Yeah, but
absolutely.
putting a different voice maybe in
Mhm.
Colton's helmet might not be a bad idea.
Yeah, because I think you had the same thing with Michael looking after Marco, right? And there's a lot of
Absolutely. Yep.
yeah, that just didn't it doesn't seem to materialize. So I don't know why
Mm,
teams continue to do that. I would pull them apart and say, you know what, we'd love for you to be a strategist, Brian. We're just going to
yeah.
put you on a different for a different driver, which is totally fine unless there's something contractually that they got to do it, or if it's just, that I guess you always want to mentor your children, right? And you want to move them to the next level and do different things, which, kind of reminds me of a personal story about just going karting with my son last week and trying to help him mentor him through some of the corners and he was racing some of the folks. This is going to get off track a little bit, but
It's all
just
right.
bear with me for a minute. And it was just like, you got to look at what these other kids are doing. And then you got to make sure that you're hitting these apexes. And then so I'm trying to give him guidance through this. And of course, it's our first time out doing this. And so he's very receptive to what I'm saying, but I can see how that can get old coming from a father
Sure.
telling you what he thinks needs to happen. So anyway, but we did that last week, which was a very interesting time. So, the no
I
change.
can tell you right now, if I can tell you right now, if that were my situation, I wouldn't want my dad on that.
Yeah, like,
Yeah, not at
and I
all.
can look at my son and go, he probably doesn't want his dad. Like initially, yeah, but eventually it's like, all right, you've taught me everything
Yeah.
you can teach me. You've been with me since the beginning, going all the way through here, and give me somebody else to talk about strategy and what we should and shouldn't be
Yeah.
doing, right? Or I've
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of back and forth on strategy and just saying, why did we do this and why didn't we do that? So maybe it's time to switch it up. And
Yeah.
I don't know.
And just thinking about my own son, right? I think my son would probably appreciate some of my like general input in the trailer, but on track, he probably would rather hear from somebody else,
Yeah,
right?
I
Like
agree.
I think he'd be fine with it in when it's calmer and in a much different setting. I think he probably would
Yeah, maybe
be
in like a
better off on it.
debriefing,
So
right? Like,
yeah,
let's talk about it. Let's see. And then,
yeah,
go from there. So that's kind of how I feel about it. But
yeah.
who knows? I know Colton wasn't the point of this discussion on Andretti Autosport, but they're making changes. I don't know what DeFrancesco is going to do. As you mentioned, they were shopping him around at the end of the season and things
Hmm.
of that sort. So I think he's still going to be the fourth guy there. And I know I'm getting off
So do I.
topic here a
Yep.
little bit, but I just think that's just the way it is. And we'll see what Kirkwood could do in Rossi's old car.
Yeah. Tim, we got a couple of seats still open, and there is a Indy Lights, formerly known as Indy Lights, champ and winner out there who's looking to settle into one of
It's
those
your
seats.
favorite guy just because of his
Sting
name.
Ray Robb.
I love it.
Love it. He, seems to have a pretty good shot. Couple of seats there. We'll talk about the first one. It's the second Juncos entry, which, we all sort of scratched our heads a little bit when Juncos announced that they're going to have a second car for sure. They didn't announce anybody in it. There
Still
was
haven't,
the,
right? It's just
nope.
kind of out there.
And there was
Huh.
the Argentinian driver that was doing some demo laps and things in Argentina that was showing there. Um, I don't know what's happening with that program because it didn't sound like it, or it doesn't seem like that's coming through, especially if Stingray Robb is, still kind of in the mix for that seat.
Mhm.
But also the second seat at Coin. A
Mhm.
lot of things at Coin going on. So we are not insiders, but from what we understand,
Slightly.
Sato,
We're
yeah,
slightly
we're getting
insiders.
there.
Yeah.
We're getting there, despite what
Mhm.
our friend at the media department at Daytona Speedway tells us. The
We're gonna call
anyway,
them out right on the
we're
show.
gonna be
The
there
IMSA guys.
anyway, right? And
Yeah.
we're still gonna celebrate their event at the
Yeah.
same level. So anyway, I'm getting a little off track.
It's okay.
So Sato, we think Sato's program will be an oval only program, right?
Mhm.
But Coin hasn't confirmed that. We expected that to be with Coin. Coin hasn't confirmed that. And here's where I think the wild card may be, right? You have Marcus Armstrong, who is confirmed in the ride formerly known as the number 48 at Chip Ganassi Racing. And that is a road and street course ride,
Mhm.
right? Marcus will
Only. Yep.
not be riding on the ovals. If you're Sato, wouldn't you want to go to that car? Or a
Absolutely.
chance at a third Indy 500? I don't care about the rest of the ovals. At a chance at a third Indy 500? And if
I'm. Yeah.
Chip likes winners,
He does. Two-time Indy 500 champion for
right?
sure. And how fast their cars were last year, I think you could put anybody behind the wheel and they can, wheel that thing pretty well.
Yeah. You should start training just in case they need somebody.
And it's not going to work for me, but I would have maybe 10 years ago,
You
but
were
not
almost
anymore.
going to say you're too old, weren't you? And then you remember that Tony Kanaan and Scott Dixon are not that much younger than you and
Yeah,
I.
but I'm not doing triathlons and I'm not as fit as them. And I've been doing it for 20 plus years.
I
So,
am, but I'm not as fit as them either.
so yeah, like that's where you want to be if you're Sato, which I was expecting that announcement shortly after. And I think
Right.
everybody else wasn't. It's been quiet. So I don't know if they got a bunch of people that now want to go and fill that seat. And so they're looking at a slew, I'm going to call it a slew of drivers over at Chip Ganassi Racing going, who do we want to put in there and who fits the mold of our team, right?
Yeah.
Um, but
Saddle
I'm
brings
sure
some
Chip's
support.
Chip's got a lot to think about when he goes,
Mhm.
who do I put in this car? Because you got to think about, you know, the number 10 car, right? As the number 10 car is going to be
Yep.
vacant next year. So you got to sort of figure, you got to navigate the waters, if you will, to
Right.
figure out what makes sense all in all. But I'm surprised all three haven't made their announcement yet, but I'm assuming it's coming here in the next, it's got to come in the next few weeks.
Yeah, it should. Yeah, you would think, right? I mean, you would think March 5th, right? Without looking at the calendar again, I think is St. Pete.
Yeah.
So you got to get time in the simulator. You got to get back up to
Isn't
speed.
that
You got to know
April? I
what's
thought it was
going on.
April.
No, it's March.
Is it March this
Yeah.
year?
And then
Interesting.
there's a month off before we go to
Well, then you got
Texas. And
thermal.
then,
You're going to go to thermal for testing, and you got to have
yeah.
your driver lineup done by then, which that's got to be coming up
Yeah.
soon. It's like the beginning of February,
Yeah. Yeah. Spring training at thermal.
somewhere around there.
So
Yeah, because it's right after IMSA, right? Isn't it? Like the
yeah.
IMSA, yeah, the IndyCar guys will go from the Daytona, the 24 hours of Daytona, and then they'll go right over to Palm Springs for the
Yeah.
thermal testing.
Yep. There's some other drivers that are trying to sort out their IndyCar future or trying to determine if there is indeed a IndyCar future. One of those drivers, Robert Schwartzman, who is a Ferrari F1 test driver, led a group recently at Sebring that hosted a 4-car IndyCar test. Schwartzman was in a Ganassi entry.
Mm-hmm.
He led Stingray Robb, who was out testing with Coyne. Kiffin Simpson, who's actually an Indy Next driver with the HMD program, is also a Ganassi development driver, which I think is fascinating. And then Dane Cameron, who was in a Penske. Dane Cameron is, of course, their endurance driver in their, on the IMSA side of the program. So Schwartzman is an interesting name. The fact that Kevin Simpson was also out there in a big, in the big car for Ganassi, definitely shows that Ganassi understands that he's going to have to do something with that number 10, and that he's got to do something with that number 10, sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
Even though we
And
know that, right, our buddy Alex Palou can't really talk to anybody until September of this year, but it's very likely that Palou will not be returning to Ganassi.
yeah. And that test was super quiet. I didn't hear a whole lot about it at all. It
I
just kind of like
know.
popped up like this
Yeah.
was what was done. So I'm not sure why that was under wraps or why no one was covering that. But
Yeah.
when I read the one article, I was like, oh, didn't know that was going on.
Yeah, it was so weird. Just very unexpected. So
Mm-hmm.
nonetheless, I think that's what we're looking at, right? I think the big takeaway from that test there is Gadassi's already starting to,
Yeah.
put out feelers and open up his eyes and see who is, viable for that number 10.
And Schwartzman was the
Going forward.
fastest of them all, huh?
He was. He was.
Look at that.
If I'm not mistaken, I think Schwartzman was also the Friday driver in the Ferrari when we were at COTA this year.
Oh, really? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Tim, I don't know if you've heard this, but Michael Andretti has been trying to gain entry into Formula One as the 11th team.
They've been keeping that one quiet too. I haven't heard anything about that.
That one's been real quiet. Just quickly to recap, Michael Andretti is building a world-class facility in Fishers, Indiana. He has backing from Gainbridge and from Guggenheim Partners. Gotta unpack that. Gainbridge is familiar, obviously. They're the primary sponsor for Colton Herta. The parent group for Gainbridge is Group 1001, which is a financial services company. Guggenheim is interesting here, as it seems like they're the ones that are putting up big money on the Formula One side. They are
Mm-hmm.
putting up the $200 million entry fee, which is that non-dilution fee
Mm-hmm.
for the F1 entry. And it seems that they are the ones who are putting up the $200 million for this new Andretti Mecca that they're building in
Wow.
Fishers to house all of their racing endeavors. So, who then is Guggenheim Partners? They're a private equity firm with over $285 billion in assets. That's billion with a B, $285
It's
billion
huge. Yes.
in assets. From their page, Guggenheim Partners focus on the return and risk needs of insurance companies, corporate and public pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, which is one of my favorite lines, endowments and foundations, consultants, wealth managers, and high net worth investors.
Hmm.
They're not kidding around.
No, they're not.
And if all that wasn't enough, this past week, Andretti Global announced a partnership with Cadillac. Did you see that coming?
I did not see that coming.
No way.
Did not at all.
Did not at all. If you think about it, they're concentrating on this US base, they're concentrating on this US driver thing. But, and they were checking the boxes. Andretti is a brand name. Okay. And they're checking a lot of boxes with this regard. I don't see how Cadillac inclusion in this program doesn't check the final box. But everything we have seen since suggests
Still doesn't.
F1 team owners are saying, big deal.
Which is incredible. I don't understand that at all.
Let me take it a step further. It's
Go ahead.
incredible. It's incredibly arrogant.
That's where I was going with
Yeah,
this.
man.
It is so arrogant. It
Yep.
almost, and I don't mean to compare the two series. It almost reminds me of the kart days where the owners were pretty arrogant about their league and their series and not very willing to work with the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and the Tony George family, which caused this whole split. And I feel like Formula One is going down that same road here. And there's going to be, I don't know what's going to happen with the F1, but it's almost like all of them against Andretti, right? It's just, I think you'd welcome additional teams. The rules allow for additional teams. You have the backing. You just outlined it right here in the show. And then you have a major manufacturer in General Motors, the second largest manufacturer in the world, that is here to back that team. So what else do you need?
No idea. Part of, I think what might be a little bit of an issue with them is that GM is not really coming in as a manufacturer, because they've said right off the bat that they're going to have a technical partner, right? For the engine partner, whoever that may be. But
I don't
coming
see
in at
wrong
this
with that.
time and not really knowing when their entry will be, I don't think that's unfair or unreasonable, right? Because for GM to have to start ramping up to build a Formula One engine from 2 months ago to whenever it is, like an open-ended idea that they would be joining the grid is unfair and unreasonable. So having a partner there, and whoever that may be Renault, it may be Honda, it might be Red Bull powertrains, who knows? But having that partner, I think, makes sense. And if GM is looking at an eye toward being a manufacturer, a true engine partner, when the next rules are announced or when they're launched, then you're good to go, right? But even if you say, well, it's just a branding exercise, big deal. It's a big deal.
Totally.
Right? It is a big deal. I don't, I mean, GM has big plans for Cadillac brand globally, especially as they get into electrification. So Formula One fits what they're looking for. Makes sense. And GM has never been in the Formula One World Series. So why, I don't understand why you wouldn't be anxious to do that. And they're going to activate, right? They're going to activate with presence all over the world. They're going to
Absolutely.
activate with, especially with a presence in the United States, and they're going to activate. And it's just one more way of promoting the series. I don't see it. It feels like to me that part of how the Andretti's went around trying to sell this, right? Trying to create a lot of public sort of backlash or trying to, force a
Yep.
hand here might be playing into it a little bit. And maybe, damn it, I don't want to say,
Well, they didn't do that until they got
yeah, until
the
they got
shoulder,
the
right?
stiff
They
arm.
got,
Yeah. To
yeah, they were
begin with.
like,
Yeah.
and they're like, okay, we're just going to go
Yeah.
public about this and what we're trying to do and
Yeah.
try to get support from the populace, the people,
Yeah.
and say, you know what, we're going to get in there either way. And to come back after being told no multiple times, it had to have been,
Yeah.
to bring a partner like Cadillac is huge.
Big.
It's,
Yeah.
in my opinion,
I keep coming back to
yeah.
those two things though, right? How they kind of, played this thing out in the public. That's number one. Number two, an outside chance I keep coming back to is their teams aren't really burning it up anywhere,
Well, no, not totally,
especially in
but
IndyCar where they've been.
I know they were at one time, right? They
Yeah.
were all there all the time. So I get it,
Yeah.
but at the same time,
I mean, honestly,
it,
does Mercedes care that there's a field filler in? I don't
apparently,
think they care. I don't know why they would,
uh, you have to ask Total Wolf. I
right?
don't know. It seems like they care,
Yeah.
which
I
is
mean,
silly,
yeah.
in my opinion.
So it should be
I,
the
I,
final
I'd hate
vote
to
of
say
this
it's
thing.
Europe against US, but it's just getting ugly.
It's possible. Yeah.
Yeah, it's totally possible, but
Mhm.
you know, I think you'd open the door and say, yeah, you've proven you've got the funding, you've got the resources, you've got a partner.
Mhm.
We have room. It's in the rule book.
Yeah.
Come on down. Let's do this.
Yeah. And the FIA president, even said that, we've let much smaller teams in, right? Much smaller teams, much smaller manufacturers in this thing to expand the grid. So
Yeah.
at this point, they're kind of, there's some reason there why they're holding their foot firm on not allowing the Andretti's in. So I guess we'll see what happens. I almost feel like the Cadillac thing should have been a no-brainer. That should have been a game changer for how they're looking at Andretti's application. I want to see that. I'm the idea that we would see Cadillac competing in this global series to me is exciting. Right? I'm a GM kid, right? My
Mm-hmm.
dad worked for Cadillac. My dad, worked for General Motors at
Yep.
Cadillac,
Yeah.
right? Which was the pinnacle of what we did and what we, strive to in our, of the cars and the things that we did here,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's where I would love to see that brand in that series. I really would. I would love to see that. I love to see these Cadillacs at IMSA.
Oh
When we
yeah.
see them out there, I'm so excited by that.
Yep. Beautiful machines for
Yeah.
sure. Well engineered from what we could tell when we were there on site.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see, right? That's all
I
we can
guess.
do is sort
Yeah.
of watch and see what happens. But I think if there's any teams that want to come in, this has got to be the leading one, based on all the
See,
backing they have
yeah,
and the Andretti name. Like it just seems to make sense to me. But
me too. Yep, me too. Man, speaking of INSA, Timmy, are you ready? Are you ready to freeze your butt at Daytona again
it's
as we make our
Florida.
second trip? Yeah, but it's
It's 80 and
freezing
sunny,
cold
right? Every day. The low
until
of 70.
the sun goes down.
Ah, geez. Well, yeah, last year was terribly cold.
I've been there twice, and it was the same after sunset.
Yeah.
I'm
So
not
yeah,
holding
I'm
out any
ready.
hope
I'm
at
ready for
all.
warm weather. So
Yeah,
I'm
bring your
not
own
ready to
blanket.
freeze. I can do that back here at home.
Yeah. We've got some IMSA news, and we still got some Andretti news that goes along with it. Tim, Wayne Taylor Racing with Andretti Autosport. Wayne Taylor
This one just baffles my mind. I don't understand.
This is also another one I think that came out of left field, right?
Yeah, like interesting situation here.
Is this a way for? I wonder if this is a way for Wayne Taylor to sort of walk away right, from racing at one to retire at some
It's
point,
his
right?
exit strategy. I
Yeah,
thought that too. Yeah.
yeah.
It seems to make sense, right?
Mhm. It's an accurate program. It's right. It's so it makes sense.
Top tier team,
Mhm.
right? They're always up there. They just lost the championship in the last
Yeah,
race last year, and they're always there. So I think it's an exit strategy
yeah,
for Wayne Taylor and that team, but I was surprised to hear the news too, and obviously surprised with the partnership that they have with Meyer Shank, and then you throw in this, which is
yeah.
Wayne Taylor, which
On
is
top of that, yeah.
that's like their main competitor. So I don't know how that all sort of plays out. You're playing
Who
like both
knows?
sides of the field, and hmm, I
At
don't
some
know.
point, we could probably have a show just dedicated to the series, each series that Andretti Autosport plays in,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Yeah,
just talk
definitely.
about that. Yeah. I mean,
Yep.
they could do a whole show.
Yep.
So, we'll see what happens there. That's a mouthful, definitely. Wayne Taylor Racing with Andretti Autosport. And we'll see if it brings any value or if it's just a cash infusion, maybe, or, something
Yeah,
there,
potentially.
you know.
It's part
But
ownership that'll turn
yeah,
into full ownership at some time.
yeah. We'll have more to discuss in the pre Rolex 24 show that's going to come out 2 weeks. It should be the 23rd, which will be
Okay.
our regular cadence. But
Yep.
just to hit some highlights of what we're going to look forward to. And certainly, first is the launch of the new LMDH platform known as GTP. These are the hybrid systems developed by or in partnership with Cadillac, Acura, Porsche, and BMW, with more manufacturers certainly to join. 61 entries, right, Tim, which is the absolute maximum. Why do I keep wanting to say minimum there?
I don't
61
know.
entry. I wrote it down in the notes too, and you fixed it. I appreciate it.
Yeah, because you said it was like
Yeah.
the limit that they would have,
Yeah.
which I was like, well, it's the maximum, right?
Yeah.
It's the maximum
So,
number of cars allowed.
yeah.
So I
So
changed it on you in the
take
notes.
two, right? 61
Man.
entries, which is the absolute maximum IMSA can accommodate for this event. And IndyCar regulars who will be at the Rolex 24 this year: Scott Dixon, Simon Pagenaud, uh, Elio Castroneves, Joseph Newgarden, Scott McLaughlin, Colton Herta, Renus VK, Roman Grosjean, Kyle Kirkwood, and Devlin D. Francesca. We'll have more at the pre Rolex 24 show in a couple of weeks, but just wanted to hit those highlights. Tim, I'm looking forward to
Isn't
it.
that the whole field?
Damn
You
near
should have
it,
just said the
right?
whole
Doesn't it feel like
IndyCar
it?
field
Yeah.
will be there. Like every IndyCar driver will be at the
Yeah.
Rolex 24.
10 drivers, right? 1, 2, 3, 4.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Is that
That's a
all? I don't
lot.
even think that's all of them. There's got to be a few more
Right.
that we haven't
That's a
heard
lot.
about yet.
So, but yeah, I look forward to that. I think it'll be good. I love this as a kickoff. As you know, I'm a huge fan of this series, and it's almost like it's starting for me, Tim, to get the like 1A, 1B with IndyCar.
Well, you got to look at the infusion of new cars. You got to look at the infusion of
New
the
engines.
technology.
Hmm.
Yeah, the new engines and infusion of drivers from different series. Like
Yep.
it's very attractive from a viewer standpoint to go and watch. You look at 61 entries, it gets a little busy, but at
Yeah.
the same time, we'll see how. But I agree. It's one of those things I'd mentioned before. Like if you had to get in a car and they said you could select from an Indy car or an IMSA car, which one are you going to drive around in today? And you go, maybe I'm going to go with the IMSA. It's brand
I
new,
would.
right? And
Yeah, I would.
it's
How cool that
unfortunate,
would
but
be, right? They
it'd be
sound
awesome.
cool. They look cool,
They are
right?
cool. It's
Yeah,
just a
they are.
great series right now, and they're
Yeah.
growing, right? They're growing. They got more manufacturers
Yeah.
than you can imagine, and they've got the right engineering prowess that attracted these um, manufacturers to come over there. So it has to tell me, it has to relate to what they're trying to do in the manufacturing process and development of engines for their passenger vehicles. So whatever that formula is, people way smarter than me, they need to figure it out over at IndyCar and move to that, not exact, but to that model that helps the manufacturers in their development and obviously selling more vehicles. So
I just want to see a new car, an IndyCar,
please,
sexy one.
yeah, let's do
Yeah.
it.
Tired of this one. Tired of this one. So, hey, that's all I got. What about you?
Nothing. I know you had iRacing in here, and I'd love to
I don't.
maybe touch on it a little bit, but
Go
it's just a
ahead.
very, very
I don't
interesting.
know enough about it, man. I really don't. I, I just don't know. I don't
There was
understand
a
what
huge
IndyCar is
uproar
doing.
about it, right? So
Huge.
huge, huge
Yeah.
uproar.
Yeah. Huge.
But I don't know if the casual fan is in iRacing. So obviously the diehards are in there. All the
Yeah.
fans that probably listen to our podcast, um, are maybe participating in iRacing. But there's
Yeah.
a lot of cost to get into that, and is my assumption. I don't know a ton about it, but so if you get it on a more casual system that someone could go in and play, I think you can attract some fans. So
Sure.
they got to figure out and keep the iRacing
I
go. So
think,
whoever did the contract with the other
right.
game
Game
manufacturer,
series.
like
Yep. Yep.
yeah, you got to sort of have a balance there. So
Yeah.
it's
I think from what I understand is the cars and the tracks will still be available, but they're not allowing iRacing to broadcast them as like a series or a racing series and promoting them as some sort of like
yeah,
official series. So if you're, and this is how I understand it, and this is kind of why I breezed by it, was if you are an iRacing subscriber and you've got the rig and you race on, you can still choose the DW12. You can still choose to race at Mid Ohio in the DW12 or Indianapolis in the
yeah,
DW12. It's just you can't create a series and you can't put that out there publicly to,
yeah.
you know, for
To like
more
have
eyes
others
and ears and
join on a
yeah,
weekly basis, and this is our series, and this is the tracks we run, and
yeah.
yeah,
Which
I'm
to me is incredibly short sighted, but that's what we've been saying about IndyCar's
mhm.
marketing and promotions team
Yeah,
for a few months now,
yeah, for sure.
right?
Well,
So,
hopefully they get it fixed,
yeah,
right that ship, and move on.
yeah. I appreciate you bringing us back to that, but yeah, I did. I breezed right. I
Yeah, for sure.
breezed right by it. So, well, that's it.
It's all. It's gonna be short and sweet for our
Yeah,
listeners.
we'll start picking it up from here for sure because it's as we mentioned in the outset of this, the seasons in all major series are starting to pick up,
Yeah.
and definitely the Andretti to Formula One story will definitely start to pick up, and
Hmm.
you know
We'll have some
our
driver announcements,
yeah
so
we'll
we can touch on those and what's
yeah a
going
couple
on
more there,
on that front. Yeah.
and then all of our outstanding engagement that we're looking forward to with Rolex 24 here because we had outstanding engagement last year
Yeah.
with those shows and our Instagram and everything there too. So I'm looking forward to that. So yeah, the next couple of weeks things will start picking up. Be sure to, with that said, be sure to engage with us on social media. Send us emails, send us your comments, especially on that YouTube channel. We get outstanding comments there. We appreciate that. And anything you want us to do better, do different, we take it all under consideration. So we appreciate you and we'll catch you next time. Thanks, everyone.
Take care.